friends, welcome back. Today I will continue my discussion with personality. In the previous lecture series we discussed about Myers Briggs type indicator and the big 5 personality traits. Today I will talk about some another aspect of personality in terms of some negative traits at the same point. If you remember, in the big 5 personality trait we have talked about all the positive traits such as openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness and neuroticism. But we did not extend our discussion while talking about big 5 personality traits about neuroticism, which is actually not a desirable behavioral pattern to be discussed at workplace, but definitely when we talk about personality, some negative traits also prevail at workplace. So, today I am going to discuss in detail about the another traits which have negative impact on workplace. So, except for neuroticism, the big 5 traits are called to be socially desirable. That is what I mentioned just now. But researchers have also talked about some socially undesirable traits and have relevance in organizational behavior. As I mentioned that it is not possible to have all the positive traits in the workplace and no negative traits will prevail or exist, but they do exist. So, social psychologists and OB professionals have discussed about some negative traits in terms of the Machiavellianism, Narcissism and Psychopathy. These are the extension of big 5 personality traits in terms of neuroticism and how people tend to exhibit these behavioral traits in different situations accordingly, and how people tend to perceive situations as per their personality traits. So, basically it is a constellation of negative traits or personality traits, and these 3 traits are being termed as the Dark Triad, that it comprises of the constellation of negative personality traits consisting Machiavellianism, Narcissism and Psychopathy. So, this is a constellation or an amalgamation of negative personality traits that also do exist at workplaces. So, these traits of the Dark Triad are particularly strong when an individual is under stress and unable to moderate any inappropriate responses. Every employee as an individual experiences some kind of stress at workplace, and how he handles those stresses, that is exhibited through these type of negative traits. Because an individual is trying to cope with those stresses, some people have tendency to deal with those stresses through positive patterns of behavior, and some individuals have the tendency to deal with the stress while exhibiting negative patterns of behavior. Now, these negative patterns have been discussed in form of the Dark Triad. So, sustained high levels of dark personality traits can cause individuals to derail their careers and personal life. Sometimes they have detrimental impact on their personal or professional life because they fail to handle or understand or deal or cope up with those negative situations or stressful situations, and they himself have to suffer based on their responses to the situations. So, this is a diagrammatic representation of the Dark Triad, which has 3 traits: Machiavellianism, Narcissism and Psychopath. So, we will discuss about these 3 traits in detail. The first is Machiavellianism. The personality characteristics of Mac, which is abbreviated as Mac, is named after Niccolo Machiavelli, who explained how to gain and use power. People have lot of desire to have power and how to use it in a very barbaric or shrewd manner at the same time. It is a degree to which an individual is pragmatic, maintains emotional distance and believes that ends can justify means. So, Macs are people who only have one objective, just to meet the objective through any way. It can be any object, it can be any person or any situation whom he can make maximum advantage out of it and just get the task done. So, this is that ends can justify means, that if there is any source to satisfy any goal, then it is meaningful. So, if it works, use it is a consistent with high max perspective. That means, if any situation is useful, we can use that situation or else we can leave it. So, they have this kind of tendency. So, people who score high on Machiavellianism, they have different kind of personality dispositions. For example, they manipulate more win more and persuaded less, but they persuade others more than low max, because they want to use the situation or the other person for their own benefit. So, they can persuade the other person, but the other person can never persuade people with high score on Machiavellianism. So, this is a manipulative situation, that person with high score on max, he cannot be persuaded, but he can persuade the other person. The other feature of any individual who scores high on Machiavellianism is that they do not like their job, rather they prefer that if anybody can do something for them. So, they are more stressed by their own work, but engage in more deviant work behaviors. When they are engaging in deviant behaviors means when they are manipulating people by all the means, then they tend to stoop to this level that they can also engage in deviant behaviors. High Mac employees manipulate others to their advantage and win in the short term at a job, but at the same time they are not being liked by other people in long run, because they get exposed to their own personal dispositions and people tend to understand. So, in long run they fail to maintain positive or cordial relationship with their co-workers, and finally they experience loneliness at work. So, these are the features of any individual who is scoring high on Machiavellianism. The other trait is narcissism. The one basic understanding of this term is to love oneself. The person is very much in love with himself, and he has high sense of belongingness and feeling about himself only. He first of all relate with himself in any situation, and then he can think about other person. So, this term is from Greek myth of Narcissus, a man so vain and proud he fell in love with his own image. That person is so much in love with himself. So, in psychology, narcissism describes a person who has a grandiose sense of self-importance. He requires extensive admiration and attention, and there is a sense of entitlement and is arrogant, that I am worth it, I deserve more than whatever I have. People have to respect me, people have to regard me. I am highly achievement oriented person, I have achieved a lot in my life. So, they have a sense of grandiose, they think big about themselves, because they are just falling in love with himself every moment again and again. So, narcissists often have fantasies of grand success, their tendency to exploit situations and people, and there is a sense of entitlement and lack of empathy. Since they are just dealing with themselves, they do not understand the other person's emotions. They have lot of affection only for themselves, not for the other person. So, this is a basic feature of any narcissist. However, narcissists can be hypersensitive and fragile, and they may experience more anger. This is but obvious that when the person who is narcissist and is not able to achieve that much of admiration or attention, that makes them very sensitive, that how come I am not receiving that much of attention which I am expecting from the other person. So, that leads to intense anger within that person. At the same time, narcissism is one of the largest predictor of increased counterproductive work behaviors in individualistic cultures and not in collectivist cultures, because they discourage self promotion. In individualistic cultures, people tend to manipulate people, but in collectivist cultures, since people are working in group, they are in teams, they find it difficulty to attract people towards themselves, and people tend to discourage such kind of deviant behaviors. But if they are working in individualistic cultures or organizations, they have more tendency to exhibit this kind of negative trait, and they even tend to engage in counterproductive work behaviors, because they want to manipulate people in order to get that much of success, admiration and attention. But at the same time, on the other bright side, narcissists may be more charismatic in nature, since they are focusing on themselves, on their image, on their achievements. So, they tend to take some risk also, and it often becomes leaders in any group or organization. They are chosen for leadership positions. Some evidence has suggested that narcissists are more adaptable and make better business decisions than others when the issue is complex, because they know how to handle, and they tend to derive pleasure, because if they are taking any decision, then they will be in limelight, they will get appreciation, they will get acknowledgement for any particular decision he has taken. So, under such circumstances, they tend to exhibit more positivity, because only narcissist can handle such complex issues. So, even this negative personality trait as narcissism also has a brighter side at workplaces. And the other is psychopathy. Psychopathy is a tendency for a lack of concern for others and a lack of guilt or remorse when actions cause harm. In OB context, psychopathy is marked by an absence of empathy for others, their impulsive and willingness to use deceit to obtain desired ends and disregard. It is a complex behavioral problem that people fail to relate with others because they lack empathy, but at the same time they know how to manipulate situation and take advantage of any person or situation for their own benefit. So, this is something, a complex behavioral phenomena which is most of the time inclined towards exhibition of negative patterns of behavior. So, studies have suggested that psychopathy is related to the use of hard influence like tacts in terms of threats, manipulation and bullying, work behavior like physical or verbal threatening. It is like causing harm to other person and at the same time they have no guilt, or maybe to certain extent they experience pleasure in bullying the other co-worker or threatening or manipulating the other person at the same time. So, these are the three constellation or three dark traits that define a negative personality at workplaces, right. So, the Dark Triad is a helpful framework for studying three dominant dark side traits in current personality research. One emerging framework incorporates 5 additional aberrant compound traits based on the big 5. Why on the big 5? Because they are departing from the positive traits. Big 5 personality factor already have within themselves. The dark triads tend to depart from the big personality traits because other traits are positive, only neuroticism is a trait which departs from all the positive traits and tend to fall in this category of dark triad. And how they are departing from big 5 personality traits? First of all, they talk about antisocial people who are indifferent and callous towards others. That means they are harmful towards others. They use extraversion to charm people, but they may be prone to violent, counterproductive work behaviors and risky decision making. So, this is the antisocial behavior opposite to big 5, that even extraversion can be considered as a negative pattern if that trait of any individual is using for negative intentions. The other is the borderline people have low self esteem and high uncertainty. They are unpredictable in their interactions at work, are inefficient and may have low job satisfaction. Their low self esteem can lead to clinical depression. So, this is about people who are unaware of their own behavior. They are always on the edge at the borderline when there is uncertain how to behave in a particular situation, how to respond in a particular situation. So, there they tend to behave in a very complex manner. That again defines the pattern of behavior which is socially undesirable. The other is the schizotypal individuals are eccentric and disorganized. In the workplace, they can be highly creative, although they are susceptible to work stress. It is about eccentric people who have some mental disorder, which again is reflected in the personality traits, which is a negative trait, and how people find difficulty in adjusting themselves to one particular environment. They are unable to maintain interpersonal relationship, they are unable to maintain a cordial relationship with their co-workers. They have a very different and awkward thought process. When the whole organization is relying on one system, they will propose a very awkward system to bank upon, which is absolutely maybe irrelevant or impractical to bank upon. So, these are the negative patterns of behavior which are departing from big 5 personality traits. The other is the obsessive compulsive people. They are perfectionists, they can be stubborn, they can attend to details, they carry strong work ethic and be motivated by achievement. But at the same time, when this becomes very extreme, this kind of behavior becomes very extreme, it becomes difficult, it becomes complex issue within organizations. And the last is avoidant individuals. These are the traits when people avoid social interactions and prefer to work alone. They require less interaction and less attention, and they enjoy their work while being all alone. Such individuals feel inadequate and hate criticism. They can function only in environments requiring little interaction. Thus, personality traits have both positive and negative aspects, which we are already discussing right from the day 1. The degree of each trait in the big 5, the dark triad and others in a person, and the combination of traits matter a great deal to organizational outcomes. This is so obvious. The more the negative traits are being dominant at workplaces, the more difficult it becomes for the organization to achieve the goal or maintain some positive organizational outcomes. So, these are the 3 frameworks: the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the big 5 personality model and the dark triad. They are the frameworks that help organizations to identify different kind of personality traits to find the best fit within the organization and with the job, and focus on maximum organizational outcomes. All right. Next comes the other personality attributes relevant to OB. We have talked about some major frameworks. There are some other factors that should be considered in OB, where people tend to evaluate themselves from various perspectives based on their abilities, based on their competencies. Although the big 5 traits have proven highly relevant to OB, they do not exhaust the range of traits that can describe someone's personality. There are some more specific attributes that are powerful predictors of behavior in organizations, and these factors are the core self-evaluation, the bottom line conclusions individuals have about their capabilities, competence and worth as a person. How you evaluate yourself based on your own capabilities, competence and worth as a person. Where there is no measurement, it is only your individual's assessment of your own capabilities and competencies. It is a bottom line conclusion. Even when you perform the task, in the end how you assess yourself, that is core self evaluation. Now, people can have negative evaluation and positive evaluation. People who have positive core evaluations perceive themselves as effective, capable and in control of the environment. They perform better than others because they set ambitious goals and they are committed to their goals and persist longer in attempting to reach these goals. So, this is the again a behavioral disposition based on an individual's self assessment or evaluation. People provide better customer service, are more popular co-workers and have careers that both begin on better footing and ascend more rapidly over time. So, this is about how they tend to evaluate themselves, take another decision, higher decision, become more successful based on their decisions, and how they tend to become more popular within workplaces. Evidences have suggested that individuals high in core self-evaluations perform especially well if they also feel their work provides meaning and is helpful to others. This is most important aspect to talk about core self-evaluations, when they know what they are doing, what they are contributing to the organization and how and to what extent their contribution is expanding or is beneficial for the society. That gives more satisfaction to person who has high sense of core self evaluation. So, they also talk about to what extent they perceive their work to be meaningful, and people positive on this trait see more challenges in their jobs and actually attain more complex jobs. When they are evaluating themselves every now and then, they also experience some kind of complexity at the workplaces by performing the task, because they have set standards for themselves that this is my competency level. So, I have to reach to this standard and then only I can perform. So, that also creates a complexity for an individual. Whereas, people with negative core self evaluations, they struggle with self doubt, self criticism and a sense of powerlessness in the environment, which can significantly impact their well-being and job performance. In spite of having all the abilities and competencies, when an individual is actually assessing himself to be lower than what he has, then definitely this has very negative impact on job outcome. Core self evaluations are also based on 4 particular personality traits. What constitutes basically core self evaluation? It is not about that you simply say I am perfect, I have lot of competency. It has some facets, it has 4 facets to define an individual's ability. The first is self esteem, the overall value one places on oneself as a person. That is about respecting oneself, that this is what I am, I have gained something through some efforts and you tend to raise your level of esteem. Generalized self-efficacy, the personal belief about his or her capacity to perform specific tasks successfully. Generalized a specific task and then evaluation that whether and to what extent I am able or competent to perform a specific or particular task that reflects an individual's expertise in one particular area. The other is locus of control, the extent to which individuals feel that they are capable to control things in a manner that affects them. In nutshell, it means that when a person places high assessment for his own competencies, then he has the ability to control the environment. This gives him more power to perform in a way where results will turn in his favor. That is about controlling the situation, taking more autonomy and having more mastery on the environment, and you can claim that the results or the outcomes just happened because of me. That is high locus of control. It is internal locus of control, that whatever the result has happened, it is because of my efforts. And the last is emotional stability, the tendency to see oneself as confident, secure and steady, and it is opposite of neuroticism, where you perceive yourself as negative, helpless, powerlessness, but here you have more control on your emotions, you are able to understand the other person's emotions, and ultimately there is more control in form of openness, in form of adaptability and opening to new ideas and experiences. So, these are the 4 facets of core self evaluations in terms of self esteem, generalized self efficacy, locus control and emotional stability. Self monitoring, this is another framework. Core self evaluation is one framework to understand any personality, and self monitoring is also another personality trait that measures an individual's ability to adjust his or her behavior to external or situational factors, that is monitoring one's own behavior. So, this is an individual's task, internal task, how to adapt to the environment. So, people with high self monitoring show considerable adaptability in adjusting their behavior to external situational factors. They are highly sensitive to external cues and can behave differently in different situations. They are more adaptable, they are more flexible to adapt different kind of situations, and ultimately controlling or having control over the situation, presenting striking contradictions between the public persona and other private self. So, one person behaving in situation A is different, same person controlling the environment or adapting to situation B is different. So, this creates a contradiction also, how to understand, because the person is every time very much different or distinctive in nature, because he has the ability to control or adapt the environment. So, this is self monitoring. So, it has both the ways. Sometimes it becomes complex to understand, but at the same time it is a positive trait in terms of adapting to the environment. Evidence indicates that high self monitors pay closer attention to the details and behavior of others and are more capable of confirming than low self monitors. Now, confirming here means that when a person with high self monitoring is able to understand the environment, is able to adapt to the environment, then he also has the ability to confirm that what the situation requires, and the person will confirm those responses, that which is the right response to adapt right now. They also receive better performance ratings and are more likely to emerge as leader. When they understand the situation, they are more adaptable, they are more flexible, and organizations require people who can take up those leadership positions to understand situation and then fit their leadership style. So, this is more advantageous for organizations. In addition, high self monitoring managers tend to be more mobile in their careers, receive more promotions and are more likely to occupy central positions in any organization. Why? Understanding the situation, adapting to those situations and responding to those situations accordingly, that gives more space to the person to move ahead, because he can generate more resources in his own favor. Whereas people with low self monitors, people can't disguise themselves in that way, they tend to display their true dispositions and attitudes in every situation. Hence, there is a high behavioral consistency between who they are and what they do. There is clear transparency with people with self monitors, because they have no idea about the situation, but even they understand the situation, they give their response immediately. It is about on their face. What they could understand, they will present it accordingly. They will not manipulate their response, and hence they find difficulty in adjusting with the environment, and at the same time there is high behavioral consistency between who they are and what they do. People can easily decode their behaviors, people with low self monitors, that he or she can fit into this situation and this is how the person will behave, because that is the person's way to monitor the situation. So, this is another framework of personality. Now, person with low self monitor, that is the example that the person Joyce is always trouble at work. He is experiencing some kind of problem, although the person is very hardworking, competent and productive and the performing reviews, but she is rated no better than average, because it seems to have made a career of irritating bosses. The problem is that she is politically inept. Inept means the person does not understand the complexity of the situation, where to adjust, how to respond, to not to respond, whom to approach in the right manner. So, she is unable to adjust her behavior to fit in the changing situation, and ultimately her response is that I am true to myself, I do not remake myself to please others. We would describe Joyce as a low self monitor. This is how we understand the situation, how to adapt to that situation, how the situation with the gradual process moment to moment is changing and how we tend to fit into that situation. That is about people with high self monitor or low self monitor. The other is proactive personality. People who identify opportunities, show initiative, take action and persevere until meaningful change occurs. They are proactive personalities. They are persevering, they are continuously working on the problem until they get a meaningful outcome. So, they create a change in the environment irrespective of how many obstacles they tend to face. They have many desirable behaviors that organizations covet, and that behavior is proactive personality. They are more likely than others to be seen as leaders and to act as change agents, and these individuals are more likely to be satisfied with their work and help others more with their task, largely because they build more relationship with others. Since they are proactive, maybe they are more extroverted and they tend to approach people and they find lot of satisfaction in maintaining interpersonal relationships and then working. They are more likely to challenge the status quo and express or voice their displeasure when situations are not to their liking. So, that means they voice their opinions about what is right and wrong and what change need to be implemented when they experience any kind of discomfort. So, if organizations require people with entrepreneurial initiative, then proactive personality is an important factor to identify, to initiate or implement any entrepreneurial decision at workplace. As individuals, proactives are more likely than others to achieve career success. They select, create and influence work situations in their favor. They seek out job and organizational information, develop contacts in high place, engage in career planning and demonstrate persistence in the face of career obstacles. So, they are more into taking initiative, they are more into taking charge of the decision making process or enhanced decision making latitudes. Therefore, personality traits predict many important organizational outcomes. The discussion has been a renewed interest in how personality is related to employability, job search and best person job fit and person organization fit. So, person job fit is that which personality fits into the job, whereas person organization fit is that which personality fits into the organization, that is the overall workplace. So, personality is very important factor when we talk about organizational behavior. Until unless this understanding is there, it is very difficult to engage in deep decision making process. It is not only about latitude, it is also about depth of decision making process, that which employee can fit into a better job. Right. So, this is about personality in different perspectives. It is about Big 5, it is about MBTI, it is about the Dark Triad, it is about core self evaluations, it is about self monitoring and proactive. These are the personality traits, a range of personality traits that people tend to exhibit. It becomes the utmost interest of any organization how to pick, how to filter and how to adjust or fit one personality for a particular job profile in order to attain maximum outcomes. This was our discussion regarding personality. Rest we will continue in the next discussion. Thank you so much.